Hey world, it's April 28th, 2022 at about 2 p.m. my time, and please forgive my appearance. I just got back from a dog walk in between all sorts of things that I got going on, and really this is my only window to try to make something happen today. And I just keep racking my brains as to, how much further I want to go with this. And at times I'm like, you know what, it's just a waste of time. Nobody's listening. And at other times, I'm like, my God, we've reached millions of people. There's thousands of people listening, and we've got a chance to reach hundreds of thousands of more. And it's a little bit manic because I kind of go back and forth in my mind every moment of every day in consideration of what's going on out there, and it's insanity. But I really don't give a shit anymore, and I think it's probably on display right now. Just given my appearance, but I really have no choice, and I'm just going to wing it right now because I'm absorbing a lot of things like I do every single day. And again, it's the next chapter of stupidity and insanity in every single direction, in which literally the entire system of media is full of shit. I mean, there's smart people with good intentions on the internet that don't have a freaking clue of what's going on. I've just absorbed politicians, people that are trying to navigate their own space to get to where we need to go, and people that I would like to listen to, and they don't have a freaking clue of what's going on. And it just plays itself over and over. A couple of headlines today to at least address, right? First, so this guy named Bill Hwang, who is the CEO of Archegos Capital, got indicted yesterday. It looks like he's going to be arrested on criminal charges. I'm not exactly sure what the charges are at the moment. I do know that he was able to, basically manipulate banks into thinking he had more leverage than he did, more, resources than he did, more money than he did, and they just took his word for it, and they wrote billions and billions of dollars of loans to this hedge fund so that this guy could do all sorts of things that I think are known as, God, there's actually a term. It's not front running. It's it's in the top of my mind. But the bottom line is, it's just manipulation. It's manipulation of stock value based on investing a lot of money in specific situations with a whole lot of counters and hedges, and basically it props up the stock price, and it does it with huge leverage because they didn't have that much capital to begin with. And the reason why the banks do it is because they get a lot of money in fees. Now you got to ask yourself, well, and this is the thing that's got me triggered this morning, among everything else, is that, there's so many people trying to ascertain what the whole point and motive is, and they get involved with the details and a whole lot of rabbit holes, quite frankly, which are important to understand and nuance, but it's just not the full scope of the story, the beginning and the end. And everything I've been trying to tell you writ large is that banks have an unlimited amount of free money that they can throw anywhere they want. And if you understood the con, you would understand control fraud, and they do it for fees based on leverage and a bunch of deception. Meanwhile, companies are losing stock value like crazy. Liquidity in the system is going out of the window. Investors, especially retail investors, are getting their ass handed to them. Regular Americans are basically keeping their lips above water, not being able to afford anything because of the nature of inflation and where it hits you at the pump, and where it hits you in the grocery store, and where it hits you, with buying whatever commodity you need to survive. But you can't, because you got to get two jobs. You got to hang on by your fingertips, and you got to think you're fighting the good fight and doing all the right stuff. Meanwhile, guys at the top can lie, steal, and deceit and get billions of dollars in free capital for nothing to risk at everybody's expense. And it's endless, and it has been endless, and it's called the con. I literally see these politicians on the progressive side going, yeah, but, or we got to get behind and we got to do this. Meanwhile, they're just playing the game of the rules of the corrupt. And those are the biggest names and people that are supposedly resisting this system of corruption. They're not resisting the system of corruption. They're playing ball with it on its terms, and they'll never win because they're not introducing the facts, which of course are in the con. And I'm not even going to tell you the website anymore. You go figure it out on your own, or you don't. You either live and bump around, in the night with a blindfolded and be stupid and get raped and pillaged all day long, or you get informed and you get hip to the game and you join what I'm trying to do, which is try to galvanize a movement of people who give a shit about the integrity of law in our systems to be able to build a society the way that we think it actually functions, which it doesn't. And nobody seems to be the wiser, except everybody knows the system is corrupt and everybody knows the system is rigged. They know the system is a casino, but they don't understand how it's played, except the ones playing it. And the ones playing it think that they're going to be able to get through the system and, build their way up. I mean, the crypto guys and all of the other stuff, and it's just like, dude, really? Just wait until this whole thing blows. We'll see who's left freaking standing. The guys who are left standing are the guys who got rich doing the whole part. They put their cash on the sidelines. They're going to wait for it to blow, and then they'll get free money again, and they'll do it again. And meanwhile, you don't even understand tax policy. This is how insane it is, right? So the billionaires and the billionaire corporations can literally get free money, and then they can get more money lent to them against their assets from the banks that get fees for this stuff against assets that they plow into stock buybacks or some sort of securitization that they're selling right back to the federal government. And you don't get it. And you want to talk about, hey, this guy is less corrupt than that guy. My red team is more on it than the blue team. And meanwhile, you've got Obama talking about censorship. And of course, censorship because of why? Because he doesn't want anybody to know his part in this whole thing. How about that? Or at least to control it for the international oligarchs. That's what they are. In the deep state, that's what they are. But they're not in the shadows. They're right in front of your face. They're the billionaires. And I guarantee you these billionaires actually pulled the plug on Tesla and Elon Musk because of Twitter and everything else because they're playing hardball because they can. That's what happens when you get more and more and more into the hands of the fewer and fewer and fewer, and then they can control everything. They can puppeteer everyone. Is this freaking Alex Jonesville? No, it's not Alex Jonesville, you freaking morons. It's in the con. It's in the con. Everybody's walking around in circles. Everybody's walking around like they know shit. Like they know everything, quite frankly. But nobody knows anything. I literally watch people whose shows I've been on, who have seen the con, who can't remember what it was that they learned in the con because they're chasing the freaking, the zeitgeist, right? And everybody's got to talk about what's in the 24-hour cycle. They got a trend, which is another part of manipulation. And they're all complaining about, mainstream's, basically closing the doors on all of us. Meanwhile, they close the doors on everybody else. I mean, I'm serious. I like Russell Brand. I love Russell Brand. I like Joe Rogan. But they don't know what's going on, and they talk in circles. And I think really my theory about those two cats is that, they talk to Matt Taibbi, and Matt Taibbi is the best. He was the best. He's what inspired me to get into this racket, but we went so much further than Matt. And Matt, what is Matt right now? I don't know. He's what, Russiagate? I mean, come on, Matt, really? But that, like Joe Rogan and all these guys, the story's been told. No, it hasn't, you freaking morons. And I'm talking about Russell Brand, and I'm talking about Joe Rogan. Not that you're morons, you just don't know. Nobody's really a moron. They just don't have the fucking answers. They're bumbling around in circles like I was originally, but I just kept asking questions, but it doesn't make sense. And now it makes sense, and it's in the goddamn con that nobody fucking understands because they're too busy looking at some chick pole dance or some dude puke, or they're going to chase some fucking, stupid is what stupid does. Stupid is what stupid does. Barack Obama, my God, that guy's a clown. Donald Trump? Donald Trump is the kingpin joker of the whole fucking circus, and all of his followers who are like, oh yeah, but he's the guy that's going to save us from this deep state, from these vultures, from these freaking vampires, from, whoever's sucking the blood out of whatever. Fuck you. Donald Trump is a freaking control fraud. He's been a Ponzi scheme his entire existence. He got born on third base. He used all that manipulation and media and everything else to basically pat his own pocket on fees and then use it for bankruptcy for profit. What an asshole. And you think that guy's the leader of the free world when he's playing ball with Putin and he's been laundering money for Putin and Putin's got his own names? Come on. But does that make the blue side any better? We've been playing ball with Saudi Arabia for how long? And Saudi Arabia got away with what regarding 9/11? Jesus Christ, open up your eyes, people. How stupid are we? We're fucking monumentally stupid. Clueless, gutless, everything. We're just nothing. We have no honor. We have no dignity. We have no character. These clowns that get up and sing the national anthem, home of the free, land of the brave. Are you kidding me? It's home of the freaking retarded and land of the stupid. And am I going to make any friends by, calling it out a spade? I mean, who am I, dude? I'm just a regular guy. Am I a regular guy? And I'm not really a regular guy. I'm a guy that had questions. I put together a deal. I went around the country. I got the answers from all the top people in the country that put it all together so you don't have to guess anymore, so you can figure it out. But I can't break through the wall of noise because these guys can buy algorithms. These guys can buy companies. They get free money from the Fed to do it. Now there's more consortium, more continuity, more collaboration, more something. Yeah, it's all that and then some. I was thinking about, all of these guys, these journalists getting murdered and, oligarchs. Jesus, guys with billions in Russia showing up with their, being shot and their families and all this stuff, with regards to Putin. I mean, Putin is the head of the freaking mob in Russia, okay? And he's got nuclear weapons. This guy's not afraid of much, man. He doesn't like what you say, he'll take you out. Kind of like what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. I wonder when and under who that happened. Who do you think Trump may have gotten some lessons from, given all of the stuff that's been going on? Am I afraid to say this stuff? No, I'm sick and tired of these freaking assholes getting away with murder, robbing and stealing nonstop while Americans are just idiots. Looking around in circles and pointing the finger at everybody else and not looking at themselves. How many of you up right now are literally in debt up to your eyeballs? You try to keep up with the Joneses. You're trying to make some money. Maybe it's some investment real estate or this and that. And you've got your credit cards maxed out, and now you got to pay more, and you can't really provide, and you're starting to see an end run, and maybe you got involved with the market, and you're seeing your investments tank. I wonder where I heard all that before. Guess what? That was right in 2007. Exactly the same thing that's going on right now. And yet, what are you going to do? You're gonna blame Obama, right? Yeah. Well, guess what? Obama covered the whole thing up to do what it is that I'm telling you. Oh, so you're going to go to Trump? Oh, but Trump lied, steal, and deceived his entire time? No. There's only one pathway forward, and that's liberty and justice for all based on the integrity of law, based on the facts that we've got the 29 trillion goddamn truth in the con that I don't know if you guys can absorb anything more than 3-minute increments. I know a lot of you are like, keep it going, man. You're my savior, all this. And I appreciate those kind words. And I really love you for that. But I need you to step into action. I need you to like and subscribe on YouTube. I need you to elevate those numbers. I need you to share the con like your life depends on it. I need you to get out there in the fold and start, beating the drum that we got to come together to purge corruption through this justice movement that this cat named Patrick Lovell is putting together, who doesn't give a shit about what he looks like because he's just truth bombing the con. And the con is what's going on. Get it? I wrote this poem a long time ago, and I was thinking about this, It's like people can click to the next screen all day, every day, right? They can go to whatever they think, and they can outrun the madness. They can outrun the pollution that's coming up on the door and the plastic that they're ultimately going to choke on. And then when it finally captures them and they're sinking, they're going to ask for help. But nobody's going to be there to help them because nobody else could help them because they were all just helping themselves because nobody gives a shit until something happens to them. That's the problem. The problem is we've got to become unified. I know that there's a lot of white people who support Trump that aren't Nazis. I know that. I know there's a lot of good-intentioned white folks that, go to church that don't like people that, have, earrings in their nose or whatever in their earlobes and, listen to music that they don't listen to and they judge them all day long. But that doesn't mean they're bad people. They're actually good people who care about things. They just don't happen to fit in. And we used to have this thing called freedom in the United States where, you could go, like I grew up with these blue laws in Texas, for example, where one side of the county line was a dry county where they'd all go to church on Sunday and praise Jesus. And right next door, we're freaking lined with strip clubs and bars. And most of those cats were going back and forth depending on what their mood swing was, right? Where they were on their life cycle. I didn't judge that. I was like, all the power to them, man. You learn. Life's a river. We go forward, man. Shit happens. You get redeemed, you don't get redeemed. You learn, you wipe out, you get back up, all of those things. I mean, that's America, right? But the one thing about America that I always cherished above all else is that we had common sense, that we had common purpose, that we had common dignity, that we actually gave a shit about liberty and justice for all and freedom, and we had the power to knock out bad guys when we needed to. But instead, for the last 20 years, what have we done? We looked the other way with Saudi Arabia. Why? Saudi Arabia with in regards to what? 9/11. Did Saudi Arabia construct 9/11? No. They played ball, and they played ball for somebody, and I don't know exactly who, and I don't know exactly why, except for we've been stuck on fossil fuels for the next 20 years. Was that part of the plan? Well, who's it work out for? Well, it certainly works out for all the fossil fuel companies and the financial derivatives in Wall Street, as it were. And that's really what undergirds the global currency for the dollar bill. Okay, so who's that, benefit? What I'd call the status quo. And then what? It led to 2008. Okay, what happened in 2008? Well, the Federal Reserve, because we had a stagnant economy because of the global war on terror, we ended up, creating free money to create, a spike in housing, and it became the largest part of the economy for about 4 or 5 years. But it was all predicated on liar's loans because we had already shopped out the golden goose, so people didn't have jobs. They replaced it with credit, and then ultimately, when everything came crashing down because of all of these complex financial derivatives and everything that's just smoke and mirrors, that's just selling bullshit to more bullshit on top of more bullshit that these guys get fees on, and they get trillions of dollars and billions of dollars in fees. They create to pump and dump the stock based on artificial bullshit, and then in the end, the people holding the bag were the people who didn't know any better. They got set up. Just freaking Ponzi scheme. It's a con. That's why it's called the con. And then they got destroyed. And then many of them wind up in the course and are like, somebody help me. Somebody tell my story. Somebody tell, the world what's going on. And I try. I'll name names right now. I really do not give a shit anymore. I've been in contact with David Sirota and Alex Gibney. Now, years and years ago, I went to Alex Gibney and we tried to pitch him the con up front. I love Alex Gibney. I think his documentaries are the gold standard. He's the best there is. I mean, I've watched every documentary that Alex has done for decades. Now, from my criticism point of view, that he seemed to get a little bit off his A game, and he seemed to be a little bit more mayonnaise for the mainstream. And then he ended up with these monopolies. Quite frankly, he did fantastic work with Dirty Money, but he ended up with HBO, and he did this documentary about Elizabeth Holmes. He didn't understand control fraud. I was a little bit critical of that. But long and the short of it is, we went to Alex Gibney initially with the con. I had entree because one of the guys that I was working with, a guy by the name of Dr. Phil Zimbardo, who's professor emeritus at Stanford University Psychology, one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And by the way, knowing his knowledge, and when he breaks things down, it's common sense, right or wrong, the Lucifer effect. People do bad things when they get complicit in a system because they're afraid to rock the boat. Okay? And ultimately, it's this guy who I became a big fan of ours and vice versa. An incredible honor for someone like myself. This guy's in charge of what's known as the Hero Imagination Project. I highly recommend you check it out and donate to him if you can, because he's definitely somebody trying to champion whistleblowers and people who do courageous things. And that's what he's been doing for 20, 30 years, man. But Alex Gibney did a documentary based on Dr. Zimbardo. Dr. Zimbardo gave us the opportunity. Gibney, listened to us a little bit, and then he turned us on to his director of acquisition. She's like, "Hey, maybe we can do an episode of Dirty Money with you guys." We weren't really interested, although the whistleblowers that I worked with, they said, "Hey, you can reach out to them, and if they want to work with you, great." Never happened, whatever. So the next thing I know, we move on. We do our thing. 5 years later, I start reaching out to Alex Gibney because I've got so much stuff on the sidelines. And I'm saying, "Hey, Alex, man, dude, I've got the full story on Goldman and what the Supreme Court, ignored last year. We've got season 2 of the con that generates all the details of, the proof, the evidence of millions of documentation fraud, even though we've got access to thousands. But you can obviously, see the patterns all over the country of how foreclosure mills and servicers doctored up phony documents to foreclose on homes illegally that courts have enabled because they're looking the other way because they're getting paid by the system to fast track these things. And so the law doesn't matter at all. And millions of people got swept up in this thing, got buried, and then many, many others are still in the game. God bless them for fighting as hard as they have. And they found each other, which seems to be like this AA group for people who've gone through foreclosure. But the bottom line is they have no effectiveness, and they don't realize nobody's listening because I'm telling this stuff and I'm showing the evidence to Alex Gibney, the gold standard, the guy at the apex of this, who's got a monopoly at Netflix and HBO. And do you think he's interested? As far as I can tell so far, not. His silence is deafening. I mean, he's kind of told me, "Hey, do some things. I want you to reach out to David Sirota." David Sirota, the writer, the guy who was like, Bernie Sanders' campaign director, or he was one of the writers on Bernie's campaign. He was just pretty senior. I can't remember what his exact title was. But the long and the short of it is, he gets into the media. He has this, this online platform called the Daily Poster for a long time, and then he ends up doing this thing called the Lever. And they're good guys. I like what they do. They do a lot of what we do, but they do kind of stuff now, but it's small time. And he's always playing catch up. They did a what I thought was a good podcast called called Meltdown, and Meltdown was just basically the con. It had a lot of our whistleblowers, and I mean not whistleblowers, but the people that we had interviewed in the con that came from the government inside the institutions were inside, Alex Gibney and David Sirota's podcast, and they did some great stuff, but they just didn't understand the crime, and they didn't want to talk about the crime. And the reason they didn't want to talk about the crime is because I think everybody knows in power and media that you can't talk about the crime. Maybe it's like Fight Club. You just nobody can talk about it. I mean, it just the signs are so obvious, right? And meanwhile, you got guys like Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Tucker Carlson, big, highly paid guys that couldn't get on first base with this information. Then you've got the next tier of guys like, I was listening earlier today, a guy who I enjoy, and he's a little bit out there, but he's pretty damn funny. I mean, he's incredibly funny. A guy by the name of Jimmy Dore. He's one of the great comedians that, the guy's criticism is pretty spot on in a lot of ways. He's like one of these guys, throwbacks to like the Vietnam era, like anti-war all the time, and it's this Wall Street oligarchic situation. He talks in platitudes like Bernie, and yet he's critical of Bernie talking in platitudes because I've been trying to get the con and the details in front of him and folks like Nina Turner and everybody else, but they don't want to know the details. Nobody wants to know the details. Nobody wants to know the facts, because if they knew the facts, they'd actually have to do something about it, and they'd have to call. They couldn't play politics anymore. Facts like Barack Obama, the night in on the white horse and the silver lining, whatever, because he's not Trump. The guy covered for Wall Street. I'm sorry, he covered for Wall Street in the predation scheme that wiped out like 60% of African American home ownership or household wealth, and same with the Latinx. This is what everybody's favorite champion, who's talking about what identity politics right now, and he's talking about censorship. Really? Yeah, of course you're going to want to talk about censorship, because you and your buddy Eric Holder, who should have been championing the people that got destroyed, instead you covered for freaking Wall Street and you let them get away with $29 trillion. That ultimately all the white working class that were part of Ohio and the Midwest, that got screwed for 4 decades of neoliberalism because of the stuff that the Clinton wing of the party with Wall Street were able to do. They all knew they got destroyed, so they're going to give the other guy a chance. Meanwhile, the other guy is just as much of a crook as everybody else. So I come back to you full circle, and I don't know when it's going to sink in your freaking heads. Everybody's pissing on your head, telling you it's rain. Everybody's lying, or they're just stupid and they don't understand. Why am I being so declarative? Because I care and I have these answers, and it's really fucking simple. It's not rocket science. It's just, you've got to understand the system. You got to understand the role of Congress. You got to understand the rule of policy. You got to understand what our institutions are designed to do, how they got there. You got to understand the policy that of deregulation occurred, and when it occurred, and who was involved, and why they did it, and what it led to. All of those answers are on the con. Watch it or don't. I don't care. You can walk around being a fucking idiot all day. That's your freedom. But for those of you who say, how does it affect me? It affects everybody. Know that analogy I said earlier when I was talking about, people who, are working 2 jobs apiece. They can't get ahead. They can't get a house. They can't barely afford. I mean, after COVID, can you guys look around and just look at that? There was this, like, the largest freaking real estate bull run, maybe I think in history, even more than 2008, since 21? Right? Everybody starts to hear about this company, BlackRock. Who's BlackRock? Oh my God. Who is BlackRock at this stage of the game? And then you get these guys that are so-called prognosticators, critics, any sort of op-ed editorialist, the likes of Russell Brand. And this guy is so sharp and he's on it, but he just won't allow the con into his circle. Why? Why? What are they afraid of? I think everything's different for everyone, right? So I think if you're dealing with Joe Rogan and you're dealing with Russell Brand, it's like a click thing, right? Hey man, we can talk to Matt Taibbi. He played, he wrote for Rolling Stone. He's like the guru and all this thing. He'll tell it to us. Okay, he told it to us. That's where it ends. I don't need any more information. They got literally, maybe from Taibbi that I've heard, maybe 50% of the story. Crystal Ball, Sagar, I was critical of those guys today online because They just don't understand the system. And if they do, they won't talk about it. And then, you've got the so-called progressive squad. They're not doing anything. And then, recently, literally, I caught yesterday on Twitter. I think it was Mitt Romney. Yeah, everybody's favorite, Mormon senator. Who's like, he looks like he's, would be as honest and, that guy came from Bain Capital. Do you have any idea what Bain Capital is all about? Most of you don't. This stuff goes back to private equity stuff and the hedge funds and everything else. I mean, it's like 70s, 80s. It just got more and more and more. And then they ended up with control of the Federal Reserve. But Mitt Romney is saying, oh, yeah, the Dems are going to be like giving free things to everybody. And, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's always the Republican go-to. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve gave $50 trillion to Wall Street to basically bury everybody, of which, of course, Mitt Romney's a part of. Let's do the math. 50 trillion for probably somewhere in the vicinity of a few 100,000 people in the system. And I think 5 trillion for 300 million people. Can you do the math? I've used this in previous, discussions where I've said, it's like watching, a Nick Saban team at the top of their game play like maybe a subpar high school team. That's what's going on here. That's what's going on. And it's happening because everybody is fucking stupid or full of shit. I don't know what else to do, man. How much else can I do? If I were president right now, literally, can you imagine a guy who just got back from a hike wearing a t-shirt and a hat, talking to you about if I were president? Why not? Why not, right? So if I were president, you know what I'd do? I'd create the investigation and the revelations of everything that created the 2008 great financial crisis. I would have done that. That created a populist movement in advance that created thousands and thousands of people that ran for political office, that understood exactly what was going on, so you could actually get into power because we were able to, through social media, break the iron grip of mainstream and all of these other yahoos who are chasing the cycle to overcome the madness, because there's tens of millions of people that got victimized. All they have to do is be educated, which is in the con, if you ever figure out the way to watch the con. And then suddenly everybody's coming together. Everybody's like, oh my God, now I don't have to have them piss on my head telling me it's rain, because I know the truth. So we're coming together. We find it. You go and you recruit other people, and it's like, hey man, this guy Patrick Lovell's one of us. This dude's all about liberty and justice for all. You got to listen to what he's saying. And so then we start propelling each other forward. We start creating what would become this massive movement under the Justice Party that would create a modern-day Pecora hearing that would put the facts in front of the American people, that would show why Wall Street is engaged in a massive RICO conspiracy, criminal conspiracy to steal from the Fed. And then I would hold all of those son of a bitches accountable. I would root their freaking ill-gotten gains over the last 13 years. I'd throw their ass in prison, and then ultimately we'd start fresh again. And by starting fresh again, I'm talking about literally going after those who covered up 9/11 and all the question marks about 9/11. Because if you resolve the questions about our energy independence and financialization, you get rid of the highest rungs of what our country is, which has created the corruption. Now, don't get me started on all of the other problems with the military-industrial complex, as well as pharmaceuticals and all of the other things that are next here in agriculture. But I would be all about democracy. I'd be getting back to the notions of what the Fed was supposed to do from the very beginning, which is the democratization of financial of the economy, so that we're not dependent and ultra dependent on what I'm now calling the new robber barons. That's all they are. This whole situation is the new robber barons versus the new confederacy. And I hate Confederates. I hate slave owners. I hate Nazis. I'm an American. Where are all of the Americans that aren't caught up in corruption or feeding from the tube of corruption, that want to actually get our country back before it's too late? And by our country, I mean the world. Because see, the whole thing is we've been on a downward spiral to disaster ever since the turn of the century. Okay? Maybe longer, but at least the last 20 years, these guys, this system has been able to run unchallenged. That's what I would do, among other things. And, once you understand that the criminals that run the show, that control the government, got away with $50 trillion in a Ponzi scheme that they sell illegal reps and warranties based on sawdust that they then sell back to the government, you realize that there's no supply demand, that you realize that there's no integrity of the law. I know that there's a lot of things that are important to a lot of people, identity politics. That's what Obama is going to prey on. He's going to prey on identity politics, right? It's like, oh my God, it's the white supremacists. They're coming after you. But it's manipulation to hide what is systemic racism in our economy, quite frankly, that he's playing cover guy for and he's enriched himself with. I know it's really hard to hear. It's hard for me to think about. But I have to share the truth, man. That's why it's called truth bombing the con. And who am I? Guys, I'm a dude who likes fucking sports, who loves his family, who believes in upward mobility, who believes in innovation, who believes in really pretty much all answers can be answered, but we're flawed. And I understand that you start and you stop and you try to make things happen. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. Am I against free market? Hell no. I want the free market to exist. But the only way the free market can exist is through A, accountability, and B, informed citizenry. How many of us are going to buy products that we know are poisoning our children and we watch them die and their eyes pop out in front of us? How long is that company going to run? How long would we buy airline tickets on an airline that we knew were crashing 1 out of 10 planes because it was profitable for them to do so? Would you take those odds? How about actually going to a casino where they knew exactly what you were going to do and how and when you were going to do it and they controlled the outcome? Would you go to that casino if you figured it out? I mean, it goes on and on and on. Would you support I don't know, let's call it a professional sports league where you knew the whole thing was rigged the whole time to where, specific guys were going to get all the advantages and they were going to win every single time and they were going to steal all of the, would you support that? We're a land of competition. We're a land of dynamism. We're a land of innovators. We're a land of people who take chances. Okay? That doesn't happen when we have monopolies. That doesn't happen under the confederacy. There's only one way pathway forward. That's through a justice party that is going to do everything it takes to have the power to wrestle the corruption out of our system. We got to purge this corruption. And I think we can do it with manifesting a movement. I do. I think we can manifest a movement, but we haven't yet. So maybe I'm just talking to myself. Maybe I'm just, maybe I've just got something that I can look back and press play on, 10, 15 years from now when the whole world fucking blew up and that, we got some sort of fascism and millions of people are dead and all the other shit. And I'll say, well, at least I tried. And I'm not the only one. I know that so many in my circle have tried like crazy. I want to finish with this notion. So I was at a loss after the 2008 great financial crisis. I really was. Nothing made sense. But I started pulling on the threads and I got lucky and I put this thing together and I started to find the answers that I needed to have because I knew it was all bullshit. And I found whistleblowers who had unbelievable courage, unbelievable patriotism and integrity. And they did exactly what I would have thought most of us would have done. And it made me realize, yeah, of course there's heroes in America. Of course there's people who do the right thing. Of course there's people who are smart. Of course there's people who could fix this system if we could ever give them a chance. But unfortunately, there's more that are vulnerable to being lied to. There's more people that are, look, we're just going to take a shortcut and, I'm going to keep pretending that I'm doing the right thing by going to all of my jobs and, I can look myself in the mirror because I'm trying really hard. That doesn't make you a citizen necessarily. It really doesn't, because if you're not aware of how the system works, that's got us all in the, in the crosshairs of this just ginormous betrayal, this ginormous meltdown. And in history, I mean, literally, given some of the things that I've said and, what it leads to, I mean, you look at these guides, I mean, there's only one way out for most societies, and that's violence. Really. I mean, it's like war, civil war, some kind of, somebody's got to pay the price, right? And millions have got to die. I'm not that guy. I'm not trying to create a revolution because I've just got a longer term goal. And I think maybe that there's enough people out there that if they got the message and they understood this and we came together and we got organized and we put the right people in positions with a coordinated effort, that we could actually rise above to build the team to be able to compete with Nick Saban, for example. Sorry, Alabama fans, I'm not saying Nick Saban is the evil empire, even though I'm sure most of you are football fans out there going, oh yeah, he is. I happen to respect Nick Saban immensely. He does things really well, but who knows what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe I've seen so much, I wouldn't be surprised by much, to be honest with you. But I think in comparison, what I'm talking about with Wall Street and corruption with the Federal Reserve and everything else, Nick Saban probably runs a pretty tight ship. I can't compete with Michael Jordan on the basketball court, I'll tell you that, right? But I have the knowledge of how this whole system works. And if I could just somehow convince all of you that I'm the guy that you've got to listen to because nobody else is going to say it, put me out there. Help me create a tidal wave of what I'm saying. And if you don't believe just what I'm saying based on looking into my eyes and hearing this on these truth bombs or on YouTube or wherever, because watch the con. Don't take it from me. Just watch our work and understand and let the light bulb go off and know that there's so much more. You know, the con really just lays out exactly what created the great financial crisis and ultimately why it wasn't covered up. But then there's so much more. There's so many millions of people that got destroyed in the courts, and the courts just let it happen. And those of you who are watching Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and you're like, oh my God, one of the other side's lying for whatever this. I mean, this has become this thing, you know. And it's like, okay, please, can you expand your horizons? I mean, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing is pretty crazy and it's salacious, and I can see why a lot of people would pay attention to it. I paid attention to it, right? I happen to like Johnny Depp a lot. You know, and I'm disappointed in all of these things. But, you know, again, people are flawed. People are human. I understand why Johnny may have had, you know, dependency issues, but all of that being equal, in comparison to the entirety of our Wall Street financial system that set millions of people up to get buried illegally while they walked away with trillions of dollars, I don't know how that's not computing when you look around at the world you live in. How are you listening to anybody but me? Maybe I'm just listening to myself, but I know what I'm talking about. All right, man. Thanks for tuning in if you did. Onwards and upwards.